Are you really tensed while using the tenses? So here we are with yet another episode of English Made Easy with Divya, wherein we are going to talk about the rules for the correct usage of tenses. So basically when we talk about tenses, tenses tell us about time. So when we talk about any particular action, when exactly did the action take place is expressed using tenses. So when we talk about the three basic types of tenses, that is present, past and future. So present is anything that is going on at this point in time. When we talk about past, it is something that has already taken place. And when we talk about future, it is something that will take place, right? So when we talk about the present tense, the three tenses are further divided into four types. So we have simple, we have continuous, we have perfect, and we have perfect continuous tenses. So now when we talk about the simple present tense, how do we differentiate or how do we identify that where are we supposed to use these tenses is what we're going to discuss in today's session. So when we talk about the simple present tense is used to denote habitual action and universal truth or facts. So when we talk about the sentence like the sun rises in the east. Now though it is an action, but it is an everyday activity or an action when I say in the east, so it's a universal truth, and that is why I can't say the sun is rising in the east. This is incorrect. We always have to say the sun rises in the east. But if you just say the sun is rising, then it is correct. But when I say in the east, then it becomes a fact or universal truth which cannot be expressed in any other tense except simple present. To be specific, simple present is something which is very vague. It doesn't tell me anything about the completeness or incompleteness of the action. And so we always use the habitual actions. We use this particular tense to denote habitual action or universal truth. Moving ahead, when we talk about the continuous tense. Now, generally we say that we can use all the verbs in ing form. So we say dancing, playing, singing and whatnot. But there are certain verbs which cannot be used in ing form, which cannot be used in the continuous form. Do you know which are they? Alright, so let's check which verbs cannot be used in ing form. So when we talk about the verbs related to perception, possession, ownership or feelings, emotions, right? The verbs which are related to our senses, they cannot be used in ing form. Say for example, when I talk about the verb, let's say love, to love someone. So you never say I am loving you, or you never say I am hating you, or I am liking you. You never say, I am hearing you, or this flower is smelling sweet, right? So perception, possession, I am having a house in Nasik. No, I have a house. I own a house. I have short hair or long hair. So these are the instances or the verbs which cannot be used in ing or a continuous form. So we always say I love you, I like you, I hate you, or even the verbs related to opinion. Like you can't say I am believing you. We always say I believe you, or I am thinking he is an honest man. No, when you talk about opinion, it always goes like I think he is not an honest man, because in this case think is more like an opinion. When I say I was thinking of you last night, it means you were thinking about someone which is correct. But when you talk about think as an opinion, we can't use it as thinking. Moving ahead, when we talk about the perfect tense. Now perfect tense talks about completed action. When we talk about completed action, it says that action has recently taken place because we're talking about present perfect tense. But my simple question here is, how do I identify or distinguish between present perfect and simple past? So here's a very simple trick to remember. When exact time is given, when anything is mentioned with the exact time, like say for example, I met him yesterday. So I said I met him, right? So met is simple past tense. Why? Because I'm using the exact time which is yesterday. But if you are talking or referring to anybody when you met a person, let's say some time ago, and you're not mentioning when exactly, so you'll just say I have met him. We have not mentioned the exact time when this action took place, and so we always use present perfect, which shows that the action has recently taken place. Moving ahead, when we talk about the present perfect continuous tense, the simple way to remember how to use these tenses, the perfect continuous tenses, are first of all, we have to look for the key words in case of these tenses. So we have to look for the key words like since and for. Again, people generally get confused in the usage of since and for. We'll definitely have one more video made for the usage of since and for, but just to tell you in short, since is used when we talk about some exact time, one point in time, some particular point in time, one time period, like since childhood, since yesterday, since Monday, since morning. So that is one time period which is mentioned. But when you talk about for, how do we use for? It is always referred to a duration or a span. So whenever you're referring to, let's say, I haven't seen him for years, so you're talking about a span. I had been to, let's say, Goa for a month, so you're talking about a duration. For 2 hours, for 1 week. So these are the cases in which we use the perfect continuous tenses. So in this case, when I talk about the present perfect continuous tense, I have to remember one thing, like if I want to say, I have been living in Nasik for 10 years now. For 10 years, I'm talking about the duration. Or if I want to use since, I can say, I have been living in Nasik since childhood. So these are the ways in which I can use the perfect continuous tenses, or to be precise, the present perfect continuous tense. Moving ahead, when we talk about the past tense, so just like the present, simple present, when we talk about simple past, first of all, we've already discussed the difference between present perfect and simple past. So when exact time is given, we use simple past. So again, when we talk about the usage of simple past, we have to remember that we are supposed to use simple past when exact time is given. Like I can say, I missed my train, okay, which was an hour ago. So an hour ago because you're mentioning the time. Or when we talk about a discontinued habitual action, we again use simple past tense in that case as well. Like in case of simple present, we talk about habitual action. So some action which you have not continued over the years, which has been discontinued, we use simple past tense to denote that action. So I can always say, I played cricket when I was a child. Now I don't play cricket anymore. Or we can also use a modal auxiliary used to. So again, they can be used interchangeably. Either I use the modal auxiliary used to, or I use simple past tense played in this case. Moving ahead to continuous, again the same thing we have to remember. When we talk about these particular verbs, like verbs related to perception, possession, ownership, only these verbs cannot be used in ing form. And talking about past continuous tense specifically, any action or activity which was taking place in the past, we always denote it by using past continuous tense. Then when we talk about the past perfect tense, which is a little tricky now. Why? Because past always or already talks about the action which has already taken place. And now we are talking about past perfect, which means it has been completed in the past itself. So here the basic thing that we need to remember is there are two actions in the sentence which are not taking place simultaneously. So one action is taking place before and the other action is taking place afterwards. So we just have to remember the action which is taking place afterwards. Let's call it a new action. So the new action is always expressed in simple past tense, and the old action which has taken place before is expressed in past perfect tense. So to give you an example, I can always say the teacher admonished him. Let's see if you can correct the sentence or whether the sentence is actually correct itself. So you can always leave your comment in the box below. So if I say the teacher admonished him the moment she saw what the boy had done. Is the sentence correct? Please leave your comments. So the sentence is absolutely correct because the teacher admonished the child later. Admonished, which means punished. She punished him later, or she scolded him later. When she saw and she punished. So these are the actions which are taking place simultaneously. But why did she punish him? For whatever the child had done earlier. So what the child or the boy had done. So had done is past perfect tense. And so in this particular sentence, if we have to differentiate between the two actions, that is the new action and the old action, the doing of the action is nothing but had done, which is past perfect, and punishing or seeing is the new action, or these two actions are taking place simultaneously, so they are expressed in the same tense and they are the new actions, so in the simple past tense to be specific. Moving ahead, when we talk about the perfect continuous tense, that is the past perfect continuous. So any action that started in the past, that continued for some time and ended in past itself, we use past perfect continuous tense. Like I just mentioned, a simple trick or a tip to remember the perfect continuous tenses is the key words like since and for. The moment you see these two words, it is a very simple way to remember that the sentence is nothing but an example of a perfect continuous tense. Let's move to the last tense for the day, which is the future tense. And future tense, generally, we get confused because we always use only simple future or future continuous. We never use the perfect or the perfect continuous tense when it comes to future. So let's check. The first and the foremost question that comes to our mind when we talk about future is whether to use will or to use shall. So now here the answer to this question of yours is, when we talk about the modal auxiliary will, it is used with all three persons. That is first person, second person and third person. But when we talk about the modal auxiliary shall, it is used only with first person singular and plural, that is I and we. So when we talk about the future tense, I can use will as well as shall, but we have to check the subject or the person. So if it is I or we, I can use shall, but I cannot use shall with second and third person. The past form of shall, which is should, can be used with all three persons, right? So talking about the usage of simple future tense, when we talk about simple future, it refers to any action or any activity that is scheduled for future, that is scheduled at some specific time in future. Like say for example, if I have some program to attend, let's say at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, so I will always say I will attend a meeting or I will attend a program at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So will attend, that for sure at this time a particular activity is scheduled or planned. When we talk about the continuous tense, again the continuous tense can also be used in the same way. When we talk about some action or activity which is already scheduled for the next day, we can also use continuous tense in this case. So I will be attending a function tomorrow morning. So again, this is another way to use it. Talking about future continuous tense, we also have to remember when you are referring to any action that is going to take place at some point in time in future and you are referring to it with respect to the current time, right? So in that case, we use future continuous tense. I'll give you an example. If let's say I'm preparing for my last exam tomorrow, which I'm actually not, but just for an example. So if I'm preparing for my last exam, which is scheduled tomorrow, and let's say I'm studying today evening. So I'm just thinking, it is, let's say, almost 5 o'clock in the evening, or let's say 6 o'clock in the evening when I'm studying, and I'm planning for tomorrow that tomorrow at 6 o'clock I will be partying or I will be enjoying with my friends because I have completed my paper. So I will be enjoying, I will be at the cafeteria, isn't it? So I will be enjoying or I will be partying. That is how I'm talking about something which is planned with respect to present time. So something that you're planning for future with respect to your current situation or time. So that is about future continuous tense. The next is very important, which is future perfect, and which none of us uses correctly. So now here is the basic thing that you need to remember. When we talk about future perfect tense, as the word itself suggests, perfect. Perfect means the action which is completed. But we are talking about the future action. So the action which will be completed in future. So when you are sure that some action will be completed in future, in such case we have to use the future perfect tense. So to take an example, if I say my child will have completed, okay, my child will have completed the homework by the time I reach home. So right now I'm not at home, so I'm saying my child will have completed the homework by then. So which means I'm sure that this action will take place in future, will be completed in future in a particular or a stipulated period of time. So in such case, I always use future perfect tense. But what we do is, how do we get confused? We always use simple future. My child will complete his work by the time I reach home. Wrong. This is the incorrect way to say it. So whenever you are referring to anything that denotes or shows completed action, in future, we have to use future perfect tense. And coming to the last tense of the day, which is the future perfect continuous tense. Now again, like I said, the key words, if you remember, please post it in the comment section below. So the key words for perfect continuous tenses are that's absolutely correct. It is since and for. So when we talk about the future perfect continuous tense, in this case, we have to remember it is just like present, but we generally do not use it because it unnecessarily complicates the communication. So instead of saying, like I mentioned the example in case of present, I have been living in Nasik for 10 years now. So instead of simply saying that, I will unnecessarily complicate it and say, I will have been living in Nasik for 11 years next year. Why to talk about next year? We might as well talk about now, isn't it? But it is not incorrect. This is the way in which we use future perfect continuous tense. So I hope this session was really interesting and informative, and you really understood the ways in which we are supposed to use tenses. This was also especially for the students who are appearing for their boards and also the 9th standard, 8th standard classes when we talk about the usage of tenses. So I hope you enjoyed this session. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and till then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep shining. Bye.